So there is no U without UX, or is it? Let's welcome on stage the moderator for this panel, Andrei Ganch, who is product manager and UX designer at Adobe. Andrei, please come here on stage. Okay.
Hey, thanks.
Tell us who are your guests.
No? Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, guys. I'm here actually on behalf of UX Bucharest. It's really exciting to have an amazing panel right now that, without further ado, I'll invite over. So, first of all, he calls himself a designer by trade, but an entrepreneur by choice. He's a travel enthusiast, and over the past following years, he created a couple of companies like X3, Expresso, and was involved in a lot of initiatives like the Tech Hub here, PR Beta Agency, and Ceva Dulce. So I'd like to invite over Ștefan Sakal. Next, he's an internationally acclaimed journalist with over 20 years of experience. He's part of the Intercom team, a company founded by a designer and a UX person. And he's the person responsible for the blog for this amazing startup. So without further ado, we have the managing editor of Intercom, John Collins. With a background of over 15 years of products, design and usability. He is the founder of Okapi, a multidisciplinary creative agency based here in Bucharest and in San Francisco, and it's focused on building amazing digital products. So, owner and creative director, Gabi Lungu. And last but not least, a cross-media producer and entrepreneur. He has a history of event production. He owns a restaurant, a couple of nightlife venues in Tallinn, Estonia. Right now, he is part of a governmental challenge to get everybody on board in getting an Estonian ID and inviting everybody to the first digital society. So, head of product at e-residency Otvater. So guys, just a short question to break the ice. I'm expecting just a one-phrase answer. What do you do to have UX for your product? Go for it, John.
What to do to have UX for your product? Think about what, I mean, certainly at Intercom, the way we approach it is think about the job that people are going to try and do with your product. We're very big believers in the whole that jobs to be done framework. We don't embrace everything that it involves. I don't know if people are aware of it. It's Clay Christensen, the Innovator's Dilemma author and management thinker, popularized it. But so basically think about, like, you know, I don't go out and buy a product because I'm a 40-year-old male from Dublin who has 3 children. I go out and buy a product because I need to do something with it. So what are people hiring Intercom for? They're hiring Intercom because they want to talk more personally to their customers in a more natural way. So I think that informs everything, but it particularly informs UX.
Cool. Gabi, but keep it to one phrase.
Well, I don't have a product. We're a team for hire. We are building products for other companies and people. The first thing is that I think the user experience is not something that just a guy creates it. It's the effort of an entire team. It includes a lot of disciplines that can be known by only one guy. So I'm starting with copywriting, illustration, photographs, user interface, JavaScript, and so on. So, and another thing that's very important, I saw a lot of people that thinks clicking on a nice button, it's a nice user experience, and it's not about that. So I think user experience starts from the text, for example, with the first word that a user reads on your website or inside your application. So basically, to answer your question, what you are doing, we are trying to create a beautiful and easy to understand story from the beginning, starting from the text and the content, the way in that we arrange the things in the page. And after that, we go with the illustration, with the graphics, and wherever the application might have. And after that, we make the final layout and testing and so on.
What?
I was just going to say
one phrase.
One phrase. For a perfect UX, we have a perfect team.
Cool. Stefan, what do you think about that?
What isn't UX? I mean, it really comes down to that. Gabi mentioned a few points here. And actually John pointed that out too. It's you strip everything down. If you manage to understand how you would use it or understand your user, if it's know you without the UX, right? So it's all about that. Then you get it. I mean, that's what you do. I mean, you need to understand that at that point, if you wouldn't be using your application, your product, there's no way to somebody else would, you know. So let's start with that. That's the first step.
Right. For me, it was more of a tricky question because what I wanted to emphasize is independent what you do with your products. There is no not having UX for the product. So UX just is, and you can make it really good, or you can also not invest in it, and then you have a product with a poor experience. But it's not something that you actively put into a product. It just is. So now for the real questions. Let's say, as a hypothesis, that I have a small bootstrap startup, right? This is a startup environment. And I have a team of a product person and 2 developers. It's a really small team at the beginning of our journey. What should we do to what should we do to achieve this great UX as a small team? Stefan?
Yeah, if I may. Yeah, I'll start with that. I think the bigger question here is actually having bootstrap startups should be the norm in most cases, you know, so until you get whatever funding you need. But the question there is the question that any startup founder should ask is, how do I get this across to my users? I have an idea, I have epiphany, I have something that somebody might use at one point. How do I get this across? How can I explain this to people, right? And that's what it is. I mean, that's where the user experience, the first questions start. And if you don't have the money, if you don't have the resources to hire somebody full time or to dedicate some money on this, it should be everybody's job to take a step back from time to time to make sure that the user experience it's not the last thing or the last, you know. Obviously, you know, the tech guy or the developer is gonna say how nicely the code is written and, you know, how this is organized and all that stuff, and look at all the commits that I did. It doesn't really matter if the user doesn't understand this. So, you see what I'm saying? I don't know if it.
Yep.
I think the key thing in that scenario is you've got like a small company. You've got, I suppose what you're trying to say is they're very tech focused, maybe rather than design focused. I think the key thing there is that everyone in the company is constantly using the product. Like, when is the last time you signed up for your product? You know, if it's not today, this morning, first thing when I came into the office, then there's something wrong. Particularly like in the kind of world we're operating in now, where we have SaaS products and product is constantly changing. There's not a release cycle. I mean, certainly like at Intercom, we have continuous deployment, so we could release code up to 50 times a day. So the product is constantly changing. So if you aren't constantly in that product and using that product, signing up for it, going through onboarding, doing all that stuff, then you're not going to be user focused, and you're not going to have, I think, a good user experience.
So how do you create this kind of user advocacy within your teams?
Get a designer as your CEO. That's what we did. Designers is like Owen as our CEO, because he's a designer. His attention to detail is just amazing. But I mean, at the same time, you don't just play devil's advocate a bit. Not everything can come from your users, because 4 years ago, no one would have said, "Oh, what the world really needs is an app that's going to help businesses talk more personally to their customers, and will be a platform, and will do support, and will do product management, and will there was no survey that you could have done to say that. I mean, sometimes you just got to have a really good idea or a hunch, and follow it. So user data can inform that, but it's not everything.
What do you think, Abi?
So I think user experience is like makeup for a woman, for example. So she may have a different approach. If she goes to the church, she for sure will have a different approach than if she goes to a romantic dinner, for example. I guess you're looking for a pattern, and I don't think you will find one. For example, last year we made an entire digital bank with a lot of numbers and graphics and charts and so on. This year we worked on a smartwatch, and I can't find anything similar. Maybe the only thing that It's a little bit closer. It's the research that we made before the product. And after that, I mean, probably this is just do a great research, look at the competition, look at old things, look at new things, look at the future concepts and things like that. And after that, take smart decision with experience.
What did you do at eResidency in order to create the team to be much more user focused? And
Well, first we when looking at the applicants for the team members, then when we hired, we had a strong focus that everyone would have some kind of UX, that's experience, not background, but some kind of experience there. So today, product managers, myself, I have some kind of UX experience. We don't have any developers in our program per se. But what we constantly promote is education as well. So go to conferences, educate yourself, check it out what the others are doing, and try to implement it. So make yourself smarter.
nice. So another question: how do I figure out that my startup actually needs active investment in this UX area? So I have a product that's already rolling. I have users coming in, and that's for you, John. How do I know when I actually need to step on the gas pedal and invest heavily in UX?
I don't think there's ever a time you can't, and I mean certainly we wouldn't have, like, we don't have UX designers, we have product designers. Interestingly, we have a lot of product managers who have a background in UX, who probably would have had a job title of UX designer maybe like 5, 7, 8 years ago. So they're very much thinking that way, but we don't break it out as a separate discipline. And the way we're organized is we're quite small product teams. So break down the actual products that people can buy, but also we have other product teams that aren't public-facing products, you know what I mean? So there'll be like designers, engineers, and product managers all working very, very closely. And there's no sense of this is where my job stops and yours begins. It's a much more fluid arrangement. So I'd say UX just always needs to be part of it. And, even I think nowadays it's become so core that you don't have almost a separate UX designer. It's I think maybe if you're very small and you're not coming from a design background, you may need to bring someone in as a consultant to do some UX work if you're totally out of your depth. Don't get me wrong, but I think you need to think about it from day one.
So double downing on that, you mentioned that the role is somewhat shared and the team and everybody's chipping in. In the context of a small startup, as I previously mentioned, the product manager to developers, can the product manager, for instance, play the role of UX designer in this case? Is this something like a hat that anybody could wear?
If you ask me, I don't think that's a hat that should be, moved around, shouldn't be taken off. But again, as John mentioned, it really requires some experience and some background in this. It's not that you cannot do this if you don't have that background. It's the fact that you cannot articulate what needs to be done. You cannot be constructive about that. I think everybody can understand. You don't have to be a UX expert to see a bad user experience. I mean, it's pretty obvious once you see it. But the thing is, it's not everybody can pinpoint, okay, this is what you need to change to make this better, and so on and so forth. Now, as far as the original question, given our specific ecosystem, where we have probably 9 developers to 1 designer or 1 design expert, or UX expert, I guess, I think one of the main things that you can do as a small company or small startup is figure out ways to steal that kind of information, as that kind of consultancy, I guess, or consultant time, by going to like for example your meetup, right? The UX Bucharest meetup. That's very helpful. You can go there as a developer, as a startup founder, and you can ask people that actually do this for a living, what do you think, right? And maybe things that you probably saw as being wrong but didn't know what to do might actually help you pinpoint, okay, this is what you should try and do and change. But yeah, so basically, if you cannot, fake it till you make it, I guess would apply here as well. But it's always keep an eye out for it, obviously.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, a user when sees your application or your website should already know what that is and how it works from the first second. I mean, if your designer tried to make something very artistic or tried a new type of technology or a new type of button and nobody understands from the first second what's that and how it's working, I think it failed. I mean, the user experience and the user interface, it's about the user, it's not about your company or yourself. It's about how it uses your application and how he solves his own things with your application, or how he share his photo or whatever he does with your application. So I think it should be straightforward, should look good for sure by default. Any user interface should look good, but in the end it has to work and the user has to understand as soon as possible how the things are working there.
I think Stefan wants to have a follow-up on that.
Yeah, Gabi, you brought up something very interesting, which I forgot to mention while I was answering the question. Design patterns. I think that's a very good point a good moment to bring this on. For small companies, what I saw many times happen is that they try to recreate the wheel or reinvent the wheel every single time, and they say, no, what I'm doing is going to be different because I'm doing it this way, whatever. I don't know, But the iteration is not even actual iteration; it's just doing it differently, just for the sake of it, right? I mean, not really improving anything, just trying to be different. That's not where you need to be different. There are patterns, there are onboarding scenarios that you can learn from. There are many things as a small company that you can research and see how the big guys are doing it, how design patterns would work in your benefit in this case, right? Before you can actually get to the point of having, real issues. I mean, these are the very basic ones, I guess.
I mean, every designer starts by copying something, right? So,
No.
So, just switching gears a bit. In e-residency, how do you bring UX designers on board? How do you bring talented UX designers on board? What do you think it makes a great UX designer? What are its traits?
Okay, so I think e-residency as a program is a bit far-fetched. It's a bit different. So those of you who don't know what e-residency is, it's an Estonian government initiative to give out ID cards, so basically an electronic authentication document. And so we, as a team, we work with different government institutions. And you can imagine that government institutions do not have a preliminary good UX experience on their websites, usually. At least that's the case in Estonia. So what we had to do was actually we hired a UX specialist to join our team for X number of months. And he actually communicated with all the ministries, the government organizations in Estonia to help them chart their user flow and to manage the UX process. And that really worked. I mean, the government institutions they weren't happy in the beginning. In the end, they were happy. And the user flow and the process of application of the document, it went to the Estonian police, and then you send the document to the foreign ministry, and then the foreign ministry sends it via diplomatic post to a consulate in the world. So the whole process of management had to be redefined. And what made it real good was that he actually managed to do it within 8 months. So I think that really characterizes someone that's been able to, with a really short amount of limited time, was able to deliver on the assignment.
Gabi, what do you think makes a great UX designer?
For me, I mean, UX designer doesn't make too much sense. For example, maybe a UI designer makes sense. UX is the result of an entire team, in my opinion, right? So there may be a brain of this thing, but I don't think one person can solve everything. No. So I think what makes a UX design team good would be probably a great copy, a great designer, a great illustrator, and a smart mind that can arrange the content into a page that it's easy to understand and to read.
Stefan, you always said that you try to hire people that are smarter than you. What do you look in what do you see in them?
Well, to be fair, it's not hard. I mean, yeah, but I mean, specifically now with all the name droppings here, right? I mean, with UX and UI design and all that. To be from my perspective, or I've hired many people on a design role or development role or whatever else, even cooks nowadays. So yeah, it's very all across the board. And to be honest, even if I'm just gonna make a a little bit off topic here, even the user experience in the fields that don't really, you wouldn't really find user experience, are just as important, but people don't know how to call it. That's the only difference. It's another story. Yeah, okay. But when hiring designers or people on this role, we all also kind of, just like Gabi mentioned, we also try to look at different specialties that person could take on, like information architecture or just design or just prototyping or stuff that person might be good at. But again, his role or her role would be to translate a vision of an entire team in our case, most of the work, like working for hundreds of projects for clients or for design, we used to be an agency for hire, so obviously we were able to translate many of these things. And the experience kind of came with it. And after a while, you kind of saw the patterns that make up a good designer, a good UX person, right? And that person would end up being a product owner or product manager in many cases. And that person would be, in some agencies it's called account manager because they tend to be part of on the client side. But in our cases, we try to make that person part of the customer side, right? I mean, the end user, the advocacy. I mean, as an agency, you deal with the client. You don't deal with their clients, right? So there was a issue. So that's why we try to figure out a way around the client so they don't come up with, as they mentioned in the panel before, we like green, the CEO likes green, let's make the entire website green. That's not an option, so that's something we wanted to avoid, right?
So
I know.
Yeah. So for yeah, sure.
So we call ourselves a multidisciplinary creative company, and we believe in multidisciplinary people. And I think it's very important if every person in your team knows a little bit about other people's job, because their communication will be better and they will just work better together, right? So we try to make our people to be curious and look around and learn about what others are doing. I mean, a designer can learn some HTML, a developer can learn some design rules and things like that. We really believe in this multidisciplinary thing. Of course, everybody in the end should focus on his job, but that's a very good thing to have in your team.
Right, so for John in Intercom, this is a very design-focused company, right? How do you do design recruiting? Who takes the recruiting decision?
It's pretty like design recruiting. Actually, I would say before I joined Intercom, I would have said, all over the world people say, oh, it's really hard to hire engineers. I'd actually say it's much harder to hire good designers than it is to hire good engineers, particularly product designers. People who get that they're designing a product and like a whole experience and not just, I think like with product design, like we're kind of in the post-Uber era. Like Uber changed everything really in the sense of it's not just a single button, it's all the clever defaults and all the decisions it makes, which I think kind of it's like almost a post-UX era. Like that UX designer era was about making the form really easy and all that kind of stuff. Whereas now it's much more about like data should be pulled in from everywhere. It's like don't ask me to tell you what music I like, just plug into Spotify's API. So it's that kind of off topic. But no, I mean design hiring just it involves spending a lot of time. We're pretty lucky. Like our head of product, Paul Adams, our VP of product, is a former designer. That's his background. He worked in Dyson way back in the day. And we've also hired Emma Connolly, who he's an Irish guy who wanted to come back home, but he also was one of the first designers on Android Wear. So they've both got pretty big reputations in the industry. They write on our blog, so they're respected. And it's really just like a lot of hard work, working their networks, personal contacts, trying to find people. And like everyone, I'm sure it's the same all over Europe, but we can't find them necessarily in our home market, so we have to be prepared to go out, search high, low, all over the place. But it's tough hiring designers.
So, moving on, can you give me an example of a startup where UX played one major role in its success, and why do you think that happened?
A rather recent company then, maybe. Not trying to promote Estonian companies, but still a company that I like very much would be TransferWise. I don't know how much of you know the company itself, but in essence, it didn't create anything new. So the service had been there a long time ago, and there were a couple of other startups who were doing the same thing, and actually small banks as well. So they transfer money from different accounts, and they make currency exchange. And what they managed to do was just to make it simple for everyone, because banking as a sector is fucking complicated, and it's terrible when you usually go into banks. And personally, I'm horrified, because if you press the wrong button or you do something, then something very bad might happen. And they just managed to do it very, very simple and quick for me personally. So that's why I think that was great.
What do you think, Abby?
A great startup. I will start. I mean, if you remember Vimeo, for example, I liked that website a lot at that time. There was a time when every video content provider, every creator, like televisions and video companies were trying to find the next television online, and they was not finding it. And YouTube at that point was looking like a portal with a lot of links and small box, and but Vimeo was the only website that gives you a video experience, and not you didn't think you were on a website. You was in a video experience. Everything was looking different. I like that a lot, for example, at that time. Then look at Instagram, for example. I know it's a cliche, but if you remember Flickr, Photobuck, and so on, it's the only company that it's a social network in the end, right? But their success doesn't come from the servers, the high quality photos and so on. Comes from the way in that the people are sharing. It's very simple, and of course the filters of the photos. Then Uber also, I like a lot Uber. I don't have a driving license, so I'm using a lot. Before Uber, I used the Star Taxi in Bucharest. It was a great upgrade from the taxis on the corner of the street. Just better qualities, traveling qualities. But right now Uber also, the user experience of Uber is also offline. I mean, I just have to say hi. I don't have to say anything to the driver. He knows where to take me, and after that I just say goodbye and I'm leaving. I don't have to search myself for cash. I don't need the recipients and so on. It's a really great product, right?
And John, it's allowed to say intercom, but why?
Why? Because we're trying to solve a design problem. What we do, there are support products out there, there are product management products out there, there are marketing automation products out there. But we're trying to create this platform that brings all that information together and makes that really powerful. So, as I say, it's really a design problem we're trying to solve, rather than necessarily an engineering problem that we're trying to solve. So, for instance, hey, guess what? Google's trying to solve an engineering problem in terms of an algorithm that helps you find something amongst all that stuff that's out there in the world. And guess what? They have engineers as their product managers. Intercom, I think, is very much tackling a design problem. So most of our product managers actually come from a design background. One other highlight, actually, I think just is kind of interesting, just on the Uber thing. It's amazing how actually the user experience with Uber is not just the one button, but it's what Gabby mentioned, which is so many people go, it's great, I didn't have to talk to the taxi driver. So many people just want that thing of press a button, get into a taxi, get out the other end. So just think that's interesting.
Yeah, I wanted actually to go a little bit lo-fi, really down there. We had an issue, and very good example of a solution by the user experience solution. In Timișoara, we have a club. It's a members-only club, IT club. And when we initially launched it, we had some issues, some serious issues, as in how do people get in? Do we give them a code, right? Do we have those little cards that you get access? Yeah, okay. The problem with those cards, that's how we ended up doing it initially. People lost the cards, and they would knock on the door. And how do we get in? It's like, do you have your card? I don't have my card. Are you a member? I am a member. How do I know? So it was a very confusing part. And what we did after a couple of months to eliminate all these little things, we added a fingerprint, access key, access lock. Okay, that was it. And that's a very simple. I mean, that was way less expensive than actually printing the cards. That was something that people usually had with them.
Since you mentioned it was really cheap and easy.
It was a hardware solution, because I know we have a lot of hardware startups as well.
With startups, you have a limited pool of resources. You want the biggest bang for your buck.
Right.
How do you measure the ROI of UX?
That was 200 lei. I mean, the reader itself. So it was very, very, very cheap. But yeah, to go on with that question, I think it's the cheaper you are, the better your user experience is gonna be, because you simplify things to the one that makes to the ones to the thing that makes sense, right? And by the way, that's how I also see a UX designer. The one that is lazy is gonna do the best work, because he doesn't want to do 20 screens. He's gonna do 2 that gets the job done, right? And if you look at it that way, from that perspective, yeah, probably Gabi won't agree, but yeah, I'm just saying. Right. No, I'm sorry. No. Okay. Yeah.
You have a point, but I think simple things that work simple and not simple things that are very hard to use are expensive, actually, because simple things need a lot of work behind it to be simple.
I would have written something, as people say, I would have written something shorter, but I didn't have time.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
but no, actually, and I'd also take issue with, well, not an issue much, but you made the point, obviously, if something's cheaper, you have to have better UX. But also, I think what we've seen in the last couple of years is really interesting is that like business products now, where people went, oh, it doesn't matter about UX, because like people have to use this for their job, or they've invested so much money buying this product, they're going to use it anyway. Like that's just totally turned on its head, and we're actually seeing some really nice UX and business products, even stuff like recently that Facebook did with some of its advertising tools. It's really beautiful UX.
What?
Yeah, just wanted to mention a quick case study that we had with e-residency when we had to create an application platform online to apply for e-residency in a month's time. So there was a toolbar where you could actually had to upload your profile photo, because it's a national document. You have to upload your passport photocopy and your profile picture. And we didn't then spend too much time on the photo part, and then people started uploading photos of themselves on the beach or on holiday or with their cats and everything. And so that really fucked up the Estonian police processing system for 2 and 3 months. So spend some time doing it.
And on that bombshell, I think our 30 minutes are up. I want to thank the panel for their participation. I hope this was as informative for you guys. And I hope to see you next time in a UX-powered event.